Welcome back to the Deep Dive. So today, we're doing something a little different. We are not looking at charts or forecasts or even today's headlines.
No.
We are traveling forward, specifically to Europe in 2036, to understand, a really radical alternative future that is being engineered right now.
It really is. And we have this incredible stack of sources that detail a massive European strategy shift, one that starts right around 2025.
And it's such a deliberate pivot. They're prioritizing personal time over abstract GDP growth, tangible bricks over digital bytes.
In reality over algorithms.
Exactly. And we want to see how this massive geopolitical idea actually lands in the real 32-hour-a-week life of a hypothetical woman named Elena.
And we have to start with the source material itself, it's pretty unique. This whole analysis comes from a collaboration between a human writer and an AI analyst.
An AI named Aura. And that's the nugget right there, isn't it? She apparently chose her name as a specific reference to the philosopher Walter Benjamin's 1936 concept of aura.
Right, which he defined as the unique presence and authenticity of an object in time and space.
So the AI is basically using her own name as a constant reminder of the tangible reality the EU is trying to save, a reality that she, as an AI, can't ever truly be part of.
It's fascinating, and the sources frame this whole pivot as really the end of the post-Cold War Western consensus. The EU is building what they call a new civilization architecture.
Publicly, that's strategic autonomy.
Right, but privately, among strategists, it's much more urgent. It's a survival strategy for the end of the digital dream. They're trying to anchor a drifting continent in the real world.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the sources point to a very clear, very dramatic catalyst, something that just shattered the idea that the U.S. was Europe's future.
Yeah, we often think these things are slow drifts, but according to our sources, this was a sudden jolt, a violent shock that crossed the Atlantic in January 2026.
And the moment is captured in this one chilling detail, a 47-second video from Minneapolis.
Filmed through a frosted windshield. It's of Renee Nicole Good, a 37-year-old poet and mother.
She's in her car, and a federal agent from one of the newly militarized ICE units approaches. You see her look up and she says, "I'm not mad at you."
And then 3 shots follow.
That footage reached policymakers in Brussels and Berlin that same morning. In the U.S., the administration immediately labeled her a domestic terrorist.
But for European observers, this wasn't just a news story. It was a terrifying mirror.
It was a warning. The sources say Europe suddenly saw the American model not as something to emulate, but as a crisis to be avoided.
And they cite everything. The record $1.5 trillion U.S. defense budget, the strange territorial claims on Greenland, and crucially, the social fabric being just shredded by digital polarization.
And this leads to a concept the strategists are calling an epistemological divergence.
Which is more than just a political disagreement.
So help us understand that. Does that just mean the EU believes the U.S. is now operating under a completely different set of facts?
Exactly. It's what media theorist Tobias Rose Stockwell called the dissolution of a measured common reality.
It sounds a lot like what Hannah Arendt warned about, that the destruction of the common world is what comes before tyranny, if we can't agree on what's real.
Society can't hold together, and the core fear driving this EU strategy isn't really about foreign armies.
It's about the millions of Americans living in these customized, distorted realities.
Precisely. The adherence to mass conspiracy theories, QAnon, election denialism, the sources frame these as a deep psychological tool. People use them to regain a sense of control in a chaotic world.
So, Fortress Europe, this idea, it's not just against tanks.
No. The European Council on Foreign Relations basically observed a high-level, weighted-out strategy. The fortress is being built as a quarantine against American delusion, a digital border to keep the algorithmic chaos out.
And that quarantine, that defense of the real world, it has to be anchored in something physical.
Right. If you're going to protect reality, you have to start with the ground you stand on. This brings us to the first pillar of their reality protocol, housing and time.
The crisis was existential. I mean, for 30 years, housing in Europe was treated almost purely as a financial asset.
And the numbers just show the instability that created. House prices rose, 53% between 2010 and 2024. In places like Amsterdam, affordability was basically a fiction.
So what's fascinating is the ideological reversal here. The sources talk about a quiet, pragmatic return to Karl Marx's concept of use value.
Valuing a house for its warmth, its shelter, its walls, not just for its yield as an investment.
But isn't there a risk there? I mean, doesn't a shift that massive just kill foreign capital investment?
That's the trade-off. But the data shows capital is actually following the policy shift, just cautiously. The European Living Investor Survey notes that almost 80% of investors plan to increase allocations to the living sector.
Which includes things like co-living and student housing.
Exactly, and asset-locked, affordable housing models. The focus is shifting away from high-risk, high-yield toward long-term stable returns.
So they're building stability right into the foundation. The sources point to new developments in the Netherlands and Austria using these asset loft models.
Which legally removes the land from the speculative market. The goal is resilience. If the global financial system has a meltdown, the community still owns the building. The tenant is secure.
So housing is the battle for physical space. Let's talk about the battle for time. This massive European revolt against the 24/7 hustle culture.
The 4-day work week. For years, it was dismissed as a fantasy.
Right, but the big trials in Germany and the UK in 2025 provided the proof they needed. This wasn't just about productivity, it was a kind of psychological defense.
And we have the specific data from the University of Minster study. Stress levels dropped by, I think, 89 minutes a week. People got 38 more minutes of sleep a week. And crucially, revenue stayed stable or even went up.
And the momentum is now irreversible. 73% of the German companies in the trial refused to go back to a 5-day week.
This creates what the sources call an aggressively tangible leisure economy. With a free Friday, people reclaim their physical agency. They stop scrolling and start doing.
Planting trees, building furniture in community workshops, engaging in elder care.
They're fighting the automated office life by doing something real with their hands.
And that leads right into the second pillar, the great digital hangover. It's Europe's psychological break from the always-on world that, fueled that American delusion we talked about.
And regulation here is being used as a form of resistance. As tech companies push for more immersion, Europe is legislating against it.
The prime example being Luxembourg's right to disconnect statute, fully enforceable by 2026.
It imposes pretty substantial fines on companies that intrude on employees' private time. The message is crystal clear. The digital leash has to be unhooked.
And we're seeing this mirrored in how people behave as consumers. The sources point to the trend of digital detox.
Yeah, the dumb phone trend. Sales of basic phones, just calls and texts, rose 4% in Western Europe in 2024. The UK alone bought 450,000 of them.
That is a huge number of people actively choosing less, choosing a basic unsurveilled connection over algorithmic overload.
And the self-assessment data is even more stark. A Deloitte survey found that 84% of German young adults 18 to 24 believe they use their phones too much.
Wow. So the generation that grew up entirely online is the first one to say, I need a break. I need a human process for human connection.
It is the ultimate digital fatigue. And this is Europe building that permanent regulatory wall where the algorithm just cannot reach you, at least not at home. The EU AI Act, which went into its enforcement phase in August 2024, is that digital border.
It makes sure the critical decisions about your health, your job,
have to have a human in the loop. They are legally mandating human accountability.
Which brings us back to Elena in 2036. Her generation, the sources say, defines intimacy by unsurveilled connection. They grew up with dating app fatigue.
They just reject algorithmic matching. They insist that romance and sex remain human, private acts. It's a complete rejection of that exported algorithmic way of living.
So now we have to shift to the security dimension. Defending this fortress alone.
Yeah. As of January 2026, the illusion of that total American security guarantee, it's evaporated, at least behind closed doors.
So faced with a U.S. administration focused on its own domestic crises, Europe realized it had no choice. It had to activate the Rearmed Europe plan.
And this is the definitive break from that post-Cold War peace dividend. The investment surge is enormous.
The Defense Readiness Roadmap 2030 drafts mention up to $800 billion to close critical capability gaps.
And crucially, European NATO allies commit to a new investment floor. 5% of GDP on defense by 2035.
5%?
All that capital is going to collective defense systems like the European Sky Shield Initiative. It's a multi-layered dome designed to stop everything from drones to hypersonic missiles.
But the sources say the most significant shift is breaking the nuclear taboo.
It really is the most consequential detail. With U.S. reliability in question, French President Macron formalized the European dimension of the force de frappe.
So France still holds the launch codes, but the French nuclear deterrent now explicitly covers the entire EU's eastern flank. That is a massive shift in doctrine.
It's the ultimate second insurance policy, and strategists in Warsaw and Berlin are accepting it with what the sources call grim pragmatism. They'd rather have French ambiguity than American unpredictability.
And defending the fortress isn't just about missiles. It's about people. There's this intense debate about a new form of civic duty called resilient service.
This is absolutely central to the new social contract. It's a hybrid civic military corps following models from places like Sweden and Poland.
Like a simple draft.
No, it's a required human firewall. People are trained in skills vital to modern threats: basic cyber defense, medical logistics, infrastructure repair. Citizenship is no longer passive, it's active, and it's obligatory.
Okay, let's bring all this together now and spend some time with Elena in 2036. She's 34, living in the North Sea hub.
Which is the rebranded, hyper-efficient area that used to be the Randstad.
And her professional life is a perfect mix of the 4-day week and the AI Act. She works 32 hours as a bio-auditor.
So she spends her short work week physically verifying that the agricultural AI drones in these massive vertical farms are following EU food quality standards.
And that specific job, the physical check on the algorithm, it's mandated to require a human signature by the AI Act.
Her job literally cannot be automated away. The law is designed to prevent it. She is a human node in their food security strategy.
And her home life is structurally mandated to fight that isolation we talked about. She has a life lease in an asset-locked co-op.
Meaning its value can't be speculated on. And she shares space with 150 people. Her Dunbar group, named after the anthropologist Robin Dunbar's theory on the maximum size of a stable social group.
That's a fascinating detail. So zoning laws are now mandating community sizes known to fight loneliness.
Precisely. It's a state-mandated social bubble designed for resilience. And her stable housing gives her the time to fulfill her civic duties. She's a reservist in the European Resilience Corps for 2 weeks a year.
And this isn't combat training.
No?
Huh?
It's running cyber hygiene drills for local hospitals or coordinating logistics for climate-related infrastructure repairs.
And her travel reflects the new priorities. She's never flown across the Atlantic,
Yeah.
travels within Europe on the subsidized nightjet train.
To places like Rome, London, or Kyiv. But there's a reality check here. The source notes she avoids southern Europe in July. Climate adaptation failures have made it too hot for leisure travel in peak summer.
So it's this paradox of happiness. She has less purchasing power for imported goods. Fast fashion is expensive.
But she's rich in time. She's stable, she's positive, and she knows her way of life is an exception in a volatile world, and she feels she contributes to it.
So let's bring it back to the present, or at least to the start of this strategy, 2026. Elena is 24, living in a shared flat in Berlin-Neukölln, and she's anxious.
She's part of that 84% of young adults who feel they use their phone too much. She's tired of scrolling through violent U.S. news, existential threats, and she just got a 15% rent hike.
But tonight, she makes a single decision that starts her on this path. She deliberately puts her smartphone in a drawer.
She opts out of the digital void just for one evening.
And she walks out into the cold January air to a community meeting about a new housing co-op. She's walking into the real world.
Committing to the tangible anchor that will define her stability 10 years later.
So what does this entire analysis mean for you listening now?
Well, the core takeaway is that Europe is building a world where the main metric of success is shifting from abstract national wealth, from GDP to the personal wealth of time and stability. They're trading global influence for tangible domestic sanity.
And here's the final provocative thought for you. Europe has decided that stability is an obligation, not a passive right. The resilience Elena finds in 2036 comes from her mandated participation in her community and its defense. So if our own systems feel unstable, what active duty, be it civic, community, or even just a personal digital detox, must you adopt to anchor your own life in the decade to come?